Chapter 12. Wessex. The march had been a long one but, to Elund, one which was worth the boot leather. One of the South Saxons had welcomed them and housed them at Selchester, where they rested and fed well. And the king, Bayard's brother-in-law, put on a feast for them. "You should take the princess by ship, Bayard," boomed the king. "Otherwise you will be overwhelmed by Wellie's scum, bandits, thieves. I have my own, and they are much more able," Bayard replied. And the conversation drifted to Bayard's brother, and the price of imported glass from Venice. "To the royal chambers, boy," demanded the captain, as Elund chanced her arm in going to the guardroom. Aneurin looked at her bleakly as he stalked off and dipped his head to the king, whispering near his ear. Then smiled suddenly, and leaned over to Elund, lowering his voice. "When the moon begins to set, I'll come up. Will you stay awake?" Elund grinned, and nodded. 88,888,888. Because guarding the princess was rather dull. Annie, who was the maid, was quiet and efficient, and the princess spoke little to either her or Elund. So Elund waited for the Princess Ines to go to bed, and Annie opened the door to tell her she was retiring to her own bed too, in the corner of the princess's room, before relaxing and leaning against the wall, watching the clouds stream past the indigo sky. At length, Aneurin came to find Elund and had brought with him meat and bread and ale. "I'm on general guard by the stables," he told Elund. "There are guards on every floor including the one below. No one should fear for the princess's chastity." It was not something Elund generally thought about. A need to find her brother, yes, and needs for hunger and thirst. From what she had seen of the princess, little of that nature would likely occur anyway, even when she married King Mark. "We leave tomorrow," Elund told Aneurin, "and go west into Dumnonia. I think it will take as long as it took to get down to here." Aneurin nodded, then spat out the crust of one piece of bread. "Not the same as when Elfmere cooks it." "Different land," Elund replied. "It looks different. Perhaps the grain grows differently too." "And we will be in Cymric land again," Aneurin added, "in Cymraeg. I wonder if they will understand." He broke off and looked startled. Elund, who had also heard the noise, stiffened. She passed her ale flask silently to Aneurin, reaching for her sword. 88,888,888. "It all happened so fast, Lord King," Elund told Bayard in the early hours of the morning. "I heard a sound, so I waited until I could determine its origins. I saw—" Elund broke off when she noticed Edmund the captain glaring at her with such malcontent that she shuddered. "Go on," Bayard encouraged her. "What happened?" Elund kept her eye firmly fixed on the king, trying to avoid the captain's glare. "I had my sword in my hand and raised it when Thea Broken Bar, the person, or thing, got to the princess's door. I swung it, as the door opened. But Broken Bar. But there was the tricky part," Elund thought to herself, "because I swung my sword, but it went through the body. The intruder parted like mist." She wouldn't believe herself, if she was in Bayard's position, and Elund looked at the king of Mercia, waiting for demotion, at the very least. The princess is well, she was barely woken. "You did your duty, child." When Elund had lingered, because she anticipated more, Bayard leaned closer to her. "Go, enjoyed the morning. You did the right thing." When the door closed, Edmund, the captain of the guards, stepped beside his king. "I can have him watched, sire. But, if you want my honest opinion, a broken bar." Bayard nodded. "Go on." "The boy does not wish you or your family harm." "Does he even know dash? You put the infant in the river yourself, did you not?" Edmund shifted, then nodded. "Not a threat yet. But I do not look to the gods to prevent any assassination attempt. The boy may not know now, but one day he might. Put him out of sight, out of reach." Bayard got to his feet, then looked to the door through which Elund had left. "Sire?" That figure was a wight, a spirit of the land. "We move on to Tintagel." And, he swung round to appraise his captain. "The boy had better be gone before we leave Innis, before we depart for home." It was only when King Bayard had left the throne room and the door had closed behind him that Edmund, with all the sarcasm he could muster, replied, "Yes, sire."